Welcome to the Sales SOS podcast, where we answer your sales distress calls. I'm your host, Liz Hyman, bringing the rescue boat to your sales challenges. In this ever-changing sales environment, it's easy for leaders to feel adrift. We're here to be the beacon guiding you to success. Each episode, I'm joined by top sales experts and practitioners who have navigated this waters and come out victorious. Together, we'll uncover the insights and strategies that will help you hit your sales targets and grow your business. So if you're ready to turn your sales distress into sales success, you're in the right place. Let's dive into today's topic. Hi, I'm Liz Hyman, and this is the Sales SOS podcast, and we are talking about using AI in sales. And today we're going to talk about governance, or about what things do we need to put in place, what guardrails do we need to put in place as we're talking about AI. And I have with me Bryn Tillman, Bill Gannon, Renee Bigelow, John Way, Jeff Bajorek.
Hey there.
Mike Simmons.
Hello.
Chris Bowen. And
Howdy.
This is one really smart group of people who have some really incredible things to say. So let's begin. We've been talking about AI for 3 episodes now. This is our 4th episode, and we've talked a lot about what's out there, how you can use it, and what are the things we should be thinking about. We're going to, in the next about 20 minutes, we're really going to talk about what are some ways we can put guardrails in place. What are some of the governances? If you're running a business or running a team, what do you need to do to make sure that they are not off the rails? Bryn wants to start. She's ready to go.
So I think the first thing a company needs to do is add this to your handbook. Like, we have, right. Like, it's simple, but we have guardrails from our, social media perspective, our client information perspective. Companies need to start using this or grabbing compliance and having people sign off on it, right? Like, I have read and I understand the company's position on using this, right? There are so many people that are literally putting in client information. My client, ABC company, is challenged with this, and I'm looking to help them with a solution. And that is now public data. That is now, like, ChatGPT and everybody, all these AI, they're learning from every word that everyone is putting in here. And companies need to make sure that their staff understands this. And the answer, by the way, is not to block ChatGPT, because they can still use it on their phone and they can still use it on their home computer. So it's not, hey, let's just stick our head in the sand. It's like, let's deal with this head on. And here, if you want to work here, you need to sign this that says you understand our policies around AI.
I think.
Yeah, go ahead, Jeff.
2 things. We talked about this, I think it was episode 1. Who's training the intern and who's checking the intern's work? And it should probably be 2 different people.
So in case you didn't watch episode 1 and 2,
then you should go back and watch episode 1 and 2 and then come back. We'll wait. But it's
or listen.
AI
it's a podcast, but that's okay.
Right. It's if you think about AI as a very highly an intern with a very high ceiling, an intern with a ton of potential, recognize that the better inputs will lead to better outputs. It's still a garbage in, garbage out kind of situation here. So with that said, you need to make sure that you don't make too many assumptions, that you don't give it more credit than it deserves, and that you put your own ego on the line and you're willing to check your own work. Now, in order to remove some of that bias, because who wants to do this if you're running a company or if you're running a sales organization or if you're just trying to manage a territory, have somebody train the intern, have somebody else check the intern's work. Doesn't always need to be the same people on the front end and the back end, but there should always be someone at those posts. Otherwise you're abdicating your responsibility. It's just not the right thing.
I think also to that point there that we also kind of talked about, you would never have the intern talk to a news reporter. You would never have the intern talk to the CEO of a company. You would never have the intern be the first connection in terms of a sale. Like, you would just never do that.
So good.
Hard to Renee's point. Some people are doing that, and that's kind of bizarre. You would have training for that. I think to another point is that if some, there are people that are highly confident of ChatGPT or whatever AI it is, then fine. Do the same thing that you would do an intern, which is let's go through a fishbowl test, and then we're going to give you some questions, and let's see how you respond. And then you go, oh no, guess what? You're not field ready. So maybe at a minimum, do something like that before you put something out into the world, and that becomes the latest news PR crisis or whatever it is.
I think the same thing that you see with a lot of technology and the ability to do things faster is it's real easy to encode your organizational biases that you may not realize exist if that's what you're training it on. And so if you're a company that has ERGs and you're trying to handle some very different audiences, perhaps have them test run some of that to make sure it makes sense. If your ICP for a certain thing that's significant to your company is the chief marketing officer or the chief revenue officer, have them see, hey, does this thing kick back the answers that I would expect to see or what have you? Like slow down a little bit so that maybe in the long term you can go a little bit faster.
Some stress testing.
That's right.
Yeah. I would like to add to Liz. I haven't heard anybody say training. And I think a lot of people think because there is a consumer facing product on this technology, because it's inexpensive, because it's a lot of hype around it, that everyone really understands how to use it and how to get beyond mediocre and how you want them to use it. And a lot of people are doing the same thing that we expected with social media, which is, oh, if you go use it personally, then you're going to understand how to use it at work. And that's not the case. There are a lot of crossovers that I see in governance with the emergence of social media. For the first time, employees were able to talk publicly, right, to a public audience in a broadcast kind of manner. And originally, I worked in media at the time, and we had conversations about who owned that account, right? Did that account, was it owned by the reporter or was it owned by the media company, right? Those things all evolved, and they sound very like antiquated conversations, but we're running into some of the same things. So if you have employees using ChatGPT on a personal plan and they're doing planning and stuff for your company, who's going to own that, right? If you are trying to copyright or trademark something and the AI was involved or it ingested things, like you can run into a lot of areas. So you really need to make sure that you've got some people that you bring in or have on your team that have a really good understanding and you're training for the behaviors you want, because it is the wild, wild west. And there's a lot of hype. And if they're out there listening to hype, then they can really go awry really easy. And it's not their fault if you're not training.
We have a company account. Now, I haven't used it well yet, but there are 3 of us that are on that account. And so as this progresses, if the company owns an AI account, so I'm looking at this from, there's LinkedIn and there's Sales Navigator. If people work in Sales Navigator, the company owns that data. They work in their personal LinkedIn, they don't. And so I think as AI kind of grows, there will be here, if you are going to do anything about the company, it's got to be in the company's version that we have, we have sight into. We can see what's going on across the board. And in your personal, you are not allowed to mention that you're an employee here. You can't mention anything on your personal account. And so I think that could be the next evolution of how companies can control that.
And I wouldn't advocate for racking up lots of lawyer hours on any subject, but a little primer on what Deloitte and Deloitte's one example, their legal area, but there's tons of legal stuff that's already been declared. That's public information about the risks of AI. If you want to go the inexpensive way, read up on some of that. It's terribly dry in some ways, but it might just save you from putting yourself in harm's way. Might as well go to
Ask
the people that
ChatGPT to write your handbook.
Yeah.
exactly.
I mean, and if Deloitte's interested in sponsoring the program, I mean, I know some people.
This is not sponsored by Deloitte. I just want to point that out. But
I really like Deloitte, though.
but we are open to that. No, so you might as well go to the pros for some of this and get yourself a leg up on your governance. I mean, so you know where you're operating from.
So one of the things that we know about salespeople, and everyone here will admit that they do it, when salespeople don't know the answers to stuff, they make it up.
Yeah.
Right? So now, not only do we have salespeople making stuff up, we have ChatGPT making stuff up.
For the salespeople who make it up, which is
right. So
double makeup.
So we want to be really careful about making sure that at the very highest level, our vision, our values, our mission are clear. Everybody understands it. It's part of all of the content that goes out. But in terms of individual products, what's true, what's not true, what can it do, what can it do? Because if you let ChatGPT or any other AI tool start making stuff up, you're going to really have a problem. So it becomes even more important that the product team and the sales team and the marketing team are in agreement. And somehow, I don't know how you bring the AI in alignment with that, because it's the wild, wild west, but we want to be super careful about that.
Am I the only one out here who is comfortable with saying, I don't know? Like, I don't think I make stuff up anymore. Maybe when I was younger, I did.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of people. I haven't made anything up in forever.
10, 20 minutes.
I don't do it. No.
Also, though, by the way, the Mandela.
I do make stuff up on the golf course. Like I make up these creative ways.
Yeah, like your scores.
Like your score.
I've seen it.
Yeah. No, but we do know salespeople do this. I mean, it is
all the time.
All the time.
I really like, just to reinforce that point that was made a little bit earlier, you would never. In security, it's one of the things to do when you're leading organizations is put an I will never list out there. And it's a good one to do with your family too. An I will never list, because there's so many different bad actors out there that are trying to get us to do certain things. And this whole you will never approach can help make things really, really clear around how you interact with each of these tools. Clarity, lead your people well.
Liz, I'll also add in, I kind of put a lot of the guardrails and, maybe sounded a little heavy-handed on we really need to do training, but there's also a real opportunity to get to see some leadership from your team and people that want to run with this, right? Like that can help with it. Like we're talking about, let's ask ChatGPT, right? Why not ask somebody on your team who's really getting excited about this to help put together tiger teams and you mentioned resource groups, right? Like bring them in and help them. This is a frontier. You survive on the frontier as a group much better than you do alone, right? So there's a real opportunity around that in the governance part, right? Like what makes sense for us to do? What have you thought about? Where are some of the risks? What are some of the things that, how can we make this easier? How can we improve the experience? I think there's a lot of opportunity there that's kind of not happening in a lot of places because we as leaders are also wrapping our head around this at the same time. And we're used to being sort of in front and, getting our head around it and then talking to our team. And this might need to be it's moving so fast. This might need to be a place where we change that approach.
Okay. Any last thoughts on, from a leadership perspective, what guardrails do we need to put in place? What prompting, what encouraging do we need to do to get our team to safely use AI?
I think we mentioned this in one of the earlier podcasts, but we haven't mentioned it in this one. So just in case somebody missed those, if you don't have an instance of an AI that is private, that is not used on training data, that your inputs and outputs are not part of the training data, you need to be sure that you're stripping PII.
So explain that. Explain what you said.
Yeah, PII is personal identifiable information, right? And we already strip it for things like ad targeting and things like that, right? If you have a platform, I say I'm again speaking from my years in media, like when we would target customers, we would find their put them in buckets, right? But not, hey, Bren, we're going to send you an ad. It was Bren is in this bucket of salespeople, right?
Wait, hang on one second. So this whole idea of a private instance, I don't think people even know that exists.
Oh. So when you have corporate accounts, you can do different. So there's all of us who have a consumer login and are buying this as a consumer, as an individual consumer, and using ChatGPT or Anthropic and Claude or Gemini, right? Any of these, whether we're using the free accounts or paying. Those are public instances of the large language model. And unless you've set a setting or requested to opt out, and some of these are in different, everyone has a different mechanism and a different level of privacy, every different service and AI company, right? Unless you have gone through the steps to get yourself removed from your input, removed from training data, whatever those steps are, then whatever you're putting into the AI can be ingested for it to learn. And that could be someone's private information. And so you don't want personal identifiable information, name, address, phone number, things like that. Like, it'd be really great to get it to help you to structure some data around that sort of thing. What you need in order to do that is to have a private instance that is hosted through an API key where you are not, your information isn't getting shared back to the model, right, for training. You can also then fine tune your instance so that it's more grounded in your own documents and things like that, that you put tighter guardrails. This is why I say, unless you understand these things, you shouldn't be putting it out there for customers, right? Like,
so you're saying if we have a brand new product in production that is, super secret product, we shouldn't be going to ChatGPT to help us come up with the language around what this super secret thing does.
So some companies have had the equivalent of like some corporate espionage because other people are back-ending in to try and find out information, right? Like, assume that it's almost like putting a microphone to things. I'm not the person John could probably come up with some of these ways that you could prompt engineer into a backdoor or try to get into other information. That I don't spend my time on things like that. So I haven't done it. I'm just aware that it happens, right? And so when I'm working with client data, I strip out the client, if it's a transcript or something, and if it's going to be public, right? If it's like Bren, your podcast transcript, the podcast is fully public. You're cutting that up into different strategic pieces of content. That's public. I wouldn't be as worried about that, right? Like, that's going to be on the internet. It's likely going to be scraped. But if it's private, like a customer conversation where a customer is sharing their confidential data because they need to give it to you in order for you to sell to them, like, that's where you want to be more careful of the PII. That was a lot to kind of throw in, Liz, but I hope I answered your questions.
Yeah. Okay. So I want to wrap this up. And I think the one thing that we're all saying that I keep hearing is, if it could stop and think about what could go wrong. Like, what could happen here? And chances are it probably could happen. So thinking through what could go wrong and then building guardrails around how do we prevent that from happening with our team. I want to thank you guys for joining me today. This has been great fun at the Sales SOS podcast. We'll be back. I think our next topic will be CRM. I'm excited to start talking about that. So I'll see you guys all next week. And that's a wrap of this episode of the Sales SOS podcast. A huge thank you to our experts for throwing us a lifeline with their insights. We hope today's episode has equipped you to navigate the sales seas with confidence. Never miss an episode. Subscribe to the Sales SOS podcast on your favorite platform. If you have questions, comments, or topics you'd like us to explore, join us live on LinkedIn every second Friday, or share your questions on YouTube or LinkedIn. Until next time, keep sailing towards those sales goals. I'm Liz Hyman, your captain here at the Sales SOS podcast, saying smooth sailing and successful selling.